It is 11 and people are joining in. Uh, shall we begin, sir?
Yeah, I'm quite ready.
Sure.
Okay, so should I start? Are we done?
I'll briefly give them an intro. Dear participants, today we have with us Mr. Suman Srivastava. He's a graduate of Delhi University, IIM Ahmedabad, and IMD Lausanne. Have I said that Lausanne correctly?
Okay, Lausanne, yeah.
Yes. So he's an advertising man, a strategist, an author, marathon runner, teacher, social worker, sports fan, creative bartender, and now an entrepreneur. Suman has been the CEO of Euro RSCG India and also Chief Strategy Officer of Euro RSCG Asia Pacific. He has been the chairman of Euro RSCG's Emerging Markets Planning Council and was a member of the Global Management Committee. He loves startups. He was part of the team that started SSCNB Lintas and later part of the team that started Euro RSCG India. Today he is with us to teach us that branding is not a bad word. The talk will go on for 40 to 45 minutes and then a Q&A session for 10 minutes. All participants kindly post your questions through the Q&A feature in Zoom. The webinar begins now. Over to you, sir.
Thank you very much, Anant. Yeah, so I'm going to basically talk about branding in the social sector. And, I often get this thing that branding is really not required or, why do we need to do it, et cetera, et cetera. So I'm going to discuss some of those things. There are broadly speaking three parts to my talk. I'm going to basically say that the first part is really about arguing about how the profit sector, the corporate sector is different from the social sector. And therefore, since it is different, how is branding different in these two sectors? I will then propose a model for branding in this sector. And then I will show how that is being used for communication by a couple of brands in the social sector, as well as some brands outside from the, which have also used it very innovatively and which can be inspiring for all of us, right? So hopefully, hopefully this will be entertaining, and in the process, maybe you will learn something as well. So like I said, I often ask the question, why do we need branding in the social sector? And a lot of people say, actually, we don't need it. We're fine. We just do our work and people will get to know about us. Or many people say it's only needed for raising funds. And the third group saying, actually, we just want to tell our story. We want to tell them what we are all about. And very, very few people say it's actually needed to increase capacity and achieve the organization's mission. But really what I'm going to do today is really focus on this and say, this is really why we need branding, that it is really critical for us to achieve our mission. So nonprofits' general attitude to branding, the reason why they don't like it is because they say it's all top-down branding, and we are not a top-down organization. We are much more egalitarian. We are much more equal than others, than corporate sector. This is all about making money, and somehow that's a bad thing in the social sector. It's bad for coalitions because we have to work with so many other kinds of organizations. And really, this is about vanity. People want to say I'm better than everybody else, but we don't want to do that. We want to create change in society. It's not about us, but about the everybody, the collective. And so they start looking at it differently. So for a moment, if we say, but what is branding, right? And I think the thing is that branding is the overlap of what you have to say or what you do and what you say and how people feel. And I find that a lot of people in the social sector focused on myself, on yourself. And so if your website will say what we do, what our mission is, who our team is, it'll talk about a blog and it'll say, please donate to us. And that's the way we communicate as well. It's all about us. We don't really focus on the audience and how they feel and what should they feel and what do you want us to do. And I guess the basic thing about branding, and the only one thing you take away from this webinar, it should be this, that branding needs to be about how other people think of you, not just what you want to say about yourself. But moving on to saying, how is the corporate sector and social sectors different, right? As far as branding is concerned. So the first thing is that branding is all about competition, at least in the for-profit sector, it's all about I am better than everybody else. This toothpaste is better than all the others, or this mobile phone, or whatever it is. Whereas in the social sector, we are about collaboration. We are about working together, not just everybody in the same one NGO, but maybe that same NGO with other NGOs, maybe people in the government, people in the community, people in civil society, all sorts of things, right? So the donors and so on. So you have to work together. So there's a difference between collaboration and competition. The other thing is that in the corporate sector, most organizations are hierarchical. There's a clear-cut pyramidal structure, whereas in the social sector, we are much more participative. You know, everybody has a view. We're much more democratic, and we want to take everybody's view for what it is. The third big thing is that while in the corporate sector as well, there are people who need to speak to multiple stakeholders, but really a lot of branding is basically done to get customers. So just focused on customers. Whereas again, in the social sector, we need to think about so many different stakeholders. Corporate sector is all about customer loyalty. They just focus on customers and trying to get them to be loyal. And what I will argue a little later as well is to say that we are about cohesion. Can we get everybody in the team to band together because they believe in this ideal that is basically what the brand is? And then finally, we've got to say that, you know, in the corporate sector, the brand often has some immediate gratification. So this phone is better than, you know, it will give you some benefits immediately, or that toothpaste or whatever it is. Whereas in the social sector, we are talking of a long-term vision and maybe an unachievable vision. You know, it could just be that we are working for climate justice, or we are working for gender equality, or we are working for maybe justice in the lockdown for coronavirus, etc. So the question is, what is it that we are working for is so long-term? And so what is the benefit that we are actually offering the people that we are communicating with, that we are branding to? So we come back and say that what is branding? And, you know, in the social sector, the branding needs to be a little bit more about the mission and the vision and the values of the organization. So this is a good time to introduce to you a talk given by a guy called Simon Sinek. It's a TED talk. And if you haven't seen it, please do go and see it. But I'm going to share with you a small excerpt from this talk, and I hope that you know, you can all hear it clearly.
I call it the golden circle. Why, how, what? This little idea explains why some organizations and some leaders are able to inspire where others aren't. Let me define the terms really quickly. Every single person, every single organization on the planet knows what they do, 100%. Some know how they do it, whether you call it your differentiating value proposition or your proprietary process or your USP. But very, very few people or organizations know why they do what they do. And by why, I don't mean to make a profit. That's a result. It's always a result. By why, I mean, what's your purpose? What's your cause? What's your belief? Why does your organization exist? Well, as a result, the way we think, the way we act, the way we communicate is from the outside in. It's obvious. We go from the clearest thing to the fuzziest thing. But the inspired leaders and the inspired organizations, regardless of their size, regardless of their industry, all think, act, and communicate from the inside out. Let me give you an example. I use Apple because they're easy to understand and everybody gets it. If Apple were like everyone else, a marketing message from them might sound like this. We make great computers. They're beautifully designed, simple to use, and user-friendly. Want to buy one? Meh. And that's how most of us communicate. That's how most marketing is done. That's how most sales is done. And that's how most of us communicate interpersonally. We say what we do. We say how we're different or how we're better, and we expect some sort of behavior, a purchase, a vote, something like that. Here's our new law firm. We have the best lawyers with the biggest clients. We have, we always perform for our clients, do business with us. Here's our new car. It gets great gas mileage. It has, leather seats. Buy our car. But it's uninspiring. Here's how Apple actually communicates. Everything we do, we believe in challenging the status quo. We believe in thinking differently. The way we challenge the status quo is by making our products beautifully designed, simple to use, and user-friendly. We just happen to make great computers. Want to buy one? Totally different, right? You're ready to buy a computer from me. All I did was reverse the order of the information. People don't buy what you do, people buy why you do it. People don't buy what you do, they buy why you do it. This explains why every single person in this room is perfectly comfortable buying a computer from Apple. But we're also perfectly comfortable buying an MP3 player from Apple, or a phone from Apple, or a DVR from Apple. But as I said before, Apple's just a computer company. There's nothing that distinguishes them structurally from any of their competitors. Their competitors are all equally qualified to make all of these products. In fact, they tried. A few years ago, Gateway came out with flat screen TVs. They're eminently qualified to make flat screen TVs. They've been making flat screen monitors for years. Nobody bought one. Dell came out with MP3 players and PDAs. And they make great quality products, and they can make perfectly well-designed products. And nobody bought one. In fact, talking about it now, we can't even imagine buying an MP3 player from Dell. Why would you buy an MP3 player from a computer company? But we do it every day. People don't buy what you do, they buy why you do it.
So people don't buy what you do, people buy why you do it. And in the social sector, we have very strong whys. We have very strong missions that we are working towards. And yet we often just focus on the what. And at this stage, I want to introduce to you a book called The Brand Idea, right? This is really a book about nonprofit branding. It says managing nonprofit brands with integrity, democracy, and affinity. So integrity, the I for integrity, the DE of democracy, and the A of affinity becomes the brand idea. And so what the authors really talk about here is how brands work in the social sector. And what they say is that there is the internal brand, right? Then you have a very clear-cut identity. If you have a strong, clear-cut identity internally for the brand, then it leads to the whole team working together. It leads to cohesion of the team. That cohesion of the team increases the capacity of the team. And that capacity then in turn, in fact, reinforces the identity. And so that's how it's a positive spiral that the internal brand creates. On the other hand, there is the image of the brand, the external image of the brand. That image, if it is positive, creates a sense of trust. And that trust then increases impact. And that impact further then reinforces the image. And the really great brands in the social sector have an identity and an image that is perfectly aligned with each other. And when they are aligned, then you get cohesion and trust, and you get capacity and impact. And so this is really the virtuous cycle that they talk about in the brand idea. Now, going back to Simon Sinek's golden circle, the who, what, why. The why, how, what. And basically, I like to use the same thing, but instead of putting it as circles, I like to write it as a hut. So at the bottom, you've got the what. What is it that you do? You can have as many pillars as you like, 3, 4, 5, whatever, which is how are you different from everybody else, the how that you do it. And then, of course, the big why. And I'm going to illustrate this first with a couple of examples from the social sector. And then I will talk about how this idea of this brand hut can be used by various brands to do more communication. So the first case study I want to talk about is Daan Utsav. And most of you, hopefully all of you, know what Daan Utsav is. It is a giving festival. It happens from October 2 for 1 week every year. It has had 10 years of the festival, and each year it gets larger and larger. More and more people do events, where somebody gives something. It could be money, but it could be time, it could be skills, whatever else. Now, if you look at this organization, it's so different, right? There is no formal organization that runs the Daan Utsav, right? Just a set of volunteers who come together and then they disband. And even they don't do anything. They just spread the word as much as they can. And individual NGOs actually create events, which is all part of the Daan Utsav. Or there could be corporates that create events and so on. So somehow everybody needs to understand the idea of Daan Utsav without anybody enforcing it like a policeman. It's very different from the way a corporate sector guy would introduce, would impose their brand. It's very participative. There are thousands of individual events, maybe lakhs of individual events that make up the movement. It has multiple stakeholders, so the NGOs, the corporates, the volunteers, the community itself, the government, and so on. Everyone has to understand the essence. That's what it all dependent on. And of course, it's got a future world orientation, right? Imagines a world where everyone is a giver. I'm going to show you a song that they did last year, which I think encapsulates a lot of the values of brand itself.
छिपे से खिलौनों में भूली हुई यादें बंद पड़ी है ढेर सारी खुशियों की अलमारी तालों में है बेचारी खोलो दिलदार होके करो आज तैयारी बांटते हैं हम जो खुशी मिल जाती है वापस वही सौदा बड़ा है ये अजीब देखे न कोई हुआ गरीब दावत सब प्यार का उत्सव है ये जी दावत सब दिल से तुम देके देखो जी दावत सब प्यार का उत्सव है ये जी दावत सब दिल से तुम देके देखो जी सुन सुन चेहरों को भोली मुस्कान दे कल की पिटारियों से आशा का सामान दे राज सारे खुशियों के मिलते हैं खोने में देख ले आज तू भी खुशी कितनी देने में दावत सब प्यार का उत्सव है ये जी दावत सब दिल से तुम देके देखो जी दावत सब प्यार का उत्सव है ये जी दावत सब दिल से तुम देके देखो जी दावत सब.
So if I were to write this brand heart for this brand, the what is quite clear. It's an annual week-long festival of giving celebrated all over India. The how is, according to me, is that it's all meant to be fun. You saw everybody sort of smiling and having a really good time. It is participative. It is very, very local, and it's very diverse. And then the overall mission, if you like, the why is get everyone to experience the joy of giving. I think that this simple brand idea is something that everybody needs to know, and then that leads to great cohesion. That cohesion leads to greater capacity. That capacity, and when that internal identity of the people who are organizing this, when it goes with the with aligns with the external image, then you get wonderful things that happen. So crores of rupees get donated during this week-long festival. It's been 10 years. It gets bigger and bigger, and it's obviously creating a major amount of impact. On the other hand, the second brand I want to talk about is a brand called Teach for India. And I want to start by showing you a couple of ads that they did when they first started out, right? So this is the first ad. It says, you could settle for the designation, the neat paycheck, the long internship, the safety of the herd, a boss, a schedule, your dad's profession, your mom's approval, a compromise of dreams, a known tomorrow, 100 known tomorrows, for a name printed on a card. Or you could fight for the dream you've always had, for change, for a changed nation, for 100 kids you don't even know, for their freedom and your freedom, for the leaders that they could become, and the leader you can be, for a name carved in history. Teach for India needs leaders and visionaries to build the nation and their career. And this is the second ad. There you follow, here you lead. There you have a hierarchy of bosses. Here 100 voices calling you sir. There, lines you cannot cross. Here, minds to set free. There, a ladder to climb. Here, a door to hold open. There, a cubicle. Here, a nation. Teach for India needs leaders and visionaries to build a nation and their career. So if I was to do the same thing, it might look something like this. And I must give a caveat that I've had nothing to do with Teach for India. I've had something to do with Dhan Utsav, but nothing to do with Teach for India. And so this is just me looking at it from the outside. So I think that their what is, we get bright young people to teach underprivileged children in low resource schools. And and their overall why is we believe that one day all children will attain an excellent education. But what is really unique about them is their hows, right? So they're really about what they're really promising their fellows is personal transformation. So really as an organization, they may have the same mission that other organizations which are also in education may have, that, you know, one day all children will attain an excellent education. But really their differentiation is that they get fellows, young, bright young people who might not take up teaching or certainly will not take up teaching in these poor income schools, to say, come and give me 2 years of your life. We will train you and we will change you. We will make you into leaders. And that personal transformation is the promise that they make. And that is how they get the best teachers, and that is how they move towards their overall vision. Obviously, they do everything within a collective way. So collective as, as fellows, but also the fellows work with other teachers in their schools. They work obviously with the donors and with the community, with the parents, everybody else. And of course, education equity is a key part of what they do. So both these brands, just giving you a sense of how these brand huts are created. But I want to move on now to saying, how do you communicate this why, right? And I want to share with you some brands that have done this, because even in the corporate sector, there are brands that have started to use this why to communicate. And when it's done well, it is really wonderful. So I want to share some of these with you just to inspire you in terms of what can be done with this, right? So I want to start by talking about really the importance of why. And, you know, we already said that just now, but I want to it is. But what makes it different is that right in the middle of the book is the whole thing about Krishna giving Arjun his worldview, if you like, a lecture. And that lecture is the Bhagavad Gita. That is the philosophy that lifts something that is quite ordinary, a fight between two factions of a family, into this amazing epic that we still read about thousands of years later. And I think that is the power of why. That is what whys can do for people, right? So we already spoke about why and what it is, but really what is happening in business is that people are saying you have to put purpose into business. If brands don't have purpose, larger social purpose, then they're not going to work. And this is Paul Polman. He was the CEO of Unilever for the last 9 years or so. And he's the one who ensured that all Unilever brands have purpose. And he brought that in. So what has happened because of people like him is that we've seen that brands have evolved. They used to be, so if you look at these diagrams, the blue circle represents the physical aspects of the brand, the product, the physical product or the service, etc. What are you actually giving people? And the sort of gray circle represents the softer aspects, the brand values, if you like, of the brand. So primitive brands just talk about what they do, okay? And they don't talk about how or why. Personality brands talk less about what, and they talk a little bit more about the how. But purpose brands talk very little about the what and mostly about the why. And this is what differentiates these brands from others. And so there's another book that is worth reading. There are many, many books on this, by the way, but this is the Chief Marketing Officer, ex-Chief Marketing Officer, Procter & Gamble, Jim Stengel. And he wrote a book called Grow, where he outlined a 10-year-old study where they looked at 50 brands around the world which had a brand purpose and compared each of those brands with another brand in the same industry, in the same country, and benchmark against them. And what he's able to show in his book is that overall, not only is it that brands with purpose are liked better, but they actually perform better. Whether it's on the stock market, whether it's in terms of sales or in terms of profits, these brands have performed better than brands that didn't have this. So overall, what we are saying is that while you might say that a brand is the intersection of what consumers or people need and what you're good at, brand purpose is what the world needs and what an intersection of what the world needs and what you're good at. And when we really look at it, that's what social sector is all about, and that's what we should be good at, right? So, okay. So if I want to show you the difference between proposition, the old way of thinking, and the new way of thinking. So in the old way, we'd say a proposition was something like this, that Dove has 1/4 moisturizing cream, and therefore it nourishes your arms, your skin, whatever it is. But today, the brand purpose is all about saying, I stand for inner beauty, right? And therefore now what they're talking about is inner beauty, and Dove is, this is a campaign for real beauty, and therefore you like brand Dove, and then you might buy the products that Dove sells. Similarly, when you look at all the tech brands in the world, they all have these big, or all the most loved brands in the world today, they have some very nice mission statements, right? Which is what they're supposed to live by. So Google, for example, Google's mission is to organize the world's information and make it universally accessible and useful. Nike says to bring inspiration and innovation to every athlete in the world. If you have a body, you are an athlete. Starbucks says to inspire and nurture the human spirit, one person, one cup, and one neighborhood at a time. Simon Sinek talked about Apple, and I want to share with you the Apple film, right? The why of Apple. So he says that, Apple never talks about the product. It actually talks about, challenging the status quo. And the film I'm about to show you was a film that they ran when they were a tiny company in 1984. And the context of this ad was that they had, Apple had started out as a company, a little company in a garage. They had come out with Apple I, which was a success. They then came out with a second product called Apple II, which was a success again. They then launched 2 new products. One was called the Lisa and one was called Apple III. And both these products kind of flopped. And by now they've become a public company. They'd done an IPO, they're a public company. So now they were coming out with yet another product, and they couldn't afford a third flop, right? So they'd already had 2 flops. They couldn't afford a third flop. If they'd had a third flop, it would have probably ended the company's life. And the product that they had come out with at that time was called the Macintosh, right? The Mac, as we call it today. And that was a genuinely great product. And you would imagine that the company would then tell you about what was great about the product, but did not do so. Instead, it created the following ad.
Today we celebrate the first glorious anniversary of the information purification directives. For the first time in all history, a garden of pure ideology, where each worker secure from the pests, obeying from the duties. The force is more powerful a weapon than any fleet or army on earth. We are one people, one will, one resolve, one cause. Our enemies shall talk themselves to death, and we will fight them with their own confusion. We shall prevail.
On January 24th, Apple Computer will introduce Macintosh, and you'll see why 1984 won't be like 1984.
So that was a very gutsy thing to do, I thought, very interesting. I want to introduce a second brand, a brand called Ben & Jerry. This is an ice cream brand in the US, and I really love it. Their motto, their baseline is Ben & Jerry, peace, love, and ice cream, which is quite fantastic when you think it's just an ice cream brand. And when you go to their website, you see that they have a whole issues we care about page. And if you look at the issue, there seems to be all the major issues in the world: racial justice, democracy, GMO labeling, LGBTQ, climate justice, fair trade, and so on. It keeps going on. But every campaign that they do, every ad that they ever do, combines the fun and the of ice cream along with talking about one major issue. I'm going to show you. Let's take a look at this commercial.
Imagine this pint is our democracy, and this spoon is how we access it. The way it should work is that we'd all have one of these. We wouldn't lucky to be born with a silver one. And we each use it to get an equal share of democracy, with plenty to go around. But lately, it seems like some people are exploiting the process, taking way more than their fair share, while denying others the tools they need to participate. It's enough to make you want to just leave your spoon on the table. But what if we all took democracy into our own hands? We could make sure everyone's voice is heard, and that everyone has the same access to a democracy that serves us all equally, giving everyone a real taste of empowerment. Get involved and take action at benjerry.com/democracy.
The next, I'm going to show you one more film from Ben and Jerry.
This is what happens when ice cream is just a few degrees warmer than it should be. For Ben and Jerry's, it's a mess. For the planet, it's a metaphor. Because just 1.5 degrees warming of our planet would have an equally dramatic but much more significant impact. Millions, especially in vulnerable frontline communities, already feel the effects of our overheated climate. If we don't transition fairly and swiftly from fossil fuels to 100% renewable energy, the climate crisis will only get worse. That's why young climate strikers are calling on everyone to join them on 2 worldwide days of action, September 20th and 27th, with a jam-packed week of rallies and events in between. Our house is on fire, youth leaders say. Let's act like it. With them, we'll ensure climate justice for all and a habitable planet for future generations. Because while 1.5 degrees may not seem like much, it means the world to us. Take action and find an event near you at benjerry.com/climate.
A couple of years ago, there was a vote in Australia for, there was a referendum on whether they should allow gay marriage in Australia or not. And at that time, Ben and Jerry took out this ad. It said, "Attention customers, we are banning 2 of the same flavored scoops." That's right, no same scoop flavors until we have marriage equality for all Australians. At Ben and Jerry, we believe love comes in all flavors. Join us and say, I do to marriage equality in partnership with the Equality Campaign. Equality. Similarly, when there were Syrian refugees coming into Europe, they took out this ad. Basically, they said, "You come to our, come and tell us your story, and we'll give you some free ice cream." So you can see that everything that they do, the way they look at their own brand, their ice cream parlor in the community, they look at it as a focal point for community action. And that's what they've always done. And that's why they get so loved by their communities, because they are the people who stand up and take a stance against things. They never sit on the fence. They're always for something or against something else. And that is why they get so loved. And I guess that's the way we are as a social sector, right? We take stances, we have strong views, and we must explain those views in the communication that we do. That will make the brand stronger, both internally as well as externally. There's a very old brand that's been doing this for many, many years. It's a brand called Benetton. And Benetton has been about colors, of course, the United Colors of Benetton, but it's also been about racial justice. So every single ad that they've ever done has been about racial justice, and it somehow combines that with the kinds of clothes and the products that they sell. And they're just very, very striking ads, just hoardings really, but brilliant photography, and it says so much. And a more recent campaign from them was the Unhate campaign, and they got a lot of coverage of this because it was such unexpected kind of visuals, right? Coming to India, you look at a brand like Ariel. It's a detergent product, and detergent products traditionally have just been about stain removal. We'll remove stains, we'll remove dirt, that sort of thing. I've worked on detergents for many years, and it's kind of quite boring to say that. So Ariel for many, many years was saying that as well, and it was like, okay, whatever. But now they're asking a different question. They're asking the question, is laundry only a woman's job? And suddenly that point has suddenly hit home with a lot of women, and it sort of really communicates with them. And suddenly Ariel becomes a much loved brand. I'm going to show you a film from Ariel.
मम्मी याद है 60 को मैं जब मधु दीदी सर्विस करने लगी थी।
वो टाइपिस्ट की ना? हाँ, चैटर्जी एंड सन्स। सिर्फ 6 रुपये तनख्वाह। और अब मेरी बहू बेटे से ज्यादा कमाती है। किसने सोचा था लड़कियां इतनी आगे बढ़ जाएगी?
अरे औरत होने का मजा इस जमाने में है। सही कहा।
भैया, वो मेरी ग्रीन शर्ट धोई क्यों नहीं?
Here's another film from Ariel.
नाना ये देखो, शील्ड लेग होमवर्क हो गया। ये देखो फिर दौड़ लगा दिया। पापा ये लीजिए आपके घर जाने की टिकट। हेलो, या आई एम जस्ट गोइंग टू सेंड यू द ईमेल इन 5 minutes। या गिव मी 5 minutes। I'm working on the present।
मेरी छोटी सी गुड़िया कितनी बड़ी हो गई। घर घर खेलती थी, अब घर संभालती है, ऑफिस संभालती है। I am so proud and I am so sorry. सॉरी कि ये सब तुम्हें अकेले करना पड़ता है। सॉरी कि जब तुम घर घर खेलती थी तो मैंने तुम्हें रोका नहीं। ये नहीं कहा कि ये सिर्फ तुम्हारा काम नहीं है, तुम्हारे हस्बैंड का भी है, पर कहता ही कैसे है।
और मेरी ग्रीन शर्ट धो देना।
मैंने भी तो कभी तुम्हारी मम्मी की हेल्प नहीं की, और तुमने जो देखा वही सीखा। तुम्हारे हस्बैंड ने भी बचपन में यही देखा होगा। घर घर खेलते वक्त वो टीवी देखने की या न्यूज़पेपर पढ़ने की एक्टिंग करता होगा, और तुम जैसी कोई छोटी सी लड़की चाय बनाने की एक्टिंग करती होगी। उसके डैड की तरफ से सॉरी, तुम्हारे डैड की तरफ से सॉरी, और हर उस डैड की तरफ से सॉरी जिसने कई कई सालों से एक गलत एग्जाम्पल सेट किया। पर अभी भी देर नहीं हुई। इस सॉरी के साथ मैं अपनी तरफ से एक छोटी सी कोशिश करूंगा कि घर के काम में मम्मी की हेल्प करूं। किचन का किंग ना बन पाऊं तो कम से कम लॉन्ड्री में तो हाथ बटाऊं। इतने साल एक गलत एग्जाम्पल सेट किया है, अब कुछ सही कर जाऊं। तुम्हारा पापा।
Anand, I can see there's some comments coming on chat. If I'm not looking at the chat screen, so if there's something important,
I'm keeping a watch on it, sir.
Okay, thanks.
Yeah.
Okay. I'm going to do one more case, which is of Lifebuoy. And, you know, Lifebuoy is one of those brands that has always been about health. That is the history of Lifebuoy. It's all, but of late, it's no longer a bath soap. It's become a soap, which is a hand wash soap, basically, right? And they're about killing germs. And well before coronavirus and so on, they had this whole thing about washing your hands at least 5 times a day, etc. And they've done that. But what they've done is not just focused on, the people who actually can afford to buy Lifebuoy hand wash and things like that, but actually worked about sending this mission of cleaning your hands in the slums of India, of Pakistan, of every emerging market in the world. But the reason I want to show you this is this wonderful music video is the only way, which only ran on YouTube, but got literally millions of views. And many of you may have seen this, but I'm going to show it to you again anyway. It's a 3-minute video. I hope it plays properly.
மகிழச் செய்யணுங்க மகிழச் செய்யணுங்க தெய்வம் தந்த செல்வமையா நான் பெற்ற செல்வமையா ஆரோக்கியமும் அறிவும் பெற்று வளர்ந்துட்டானையா மனம் மகிழ்ந்தோமையா நாமே மனம் மகிழ்ந்தோமையா இந்த மகிழ்ச்சியின் வேதனை எதுவும் மறந்துடும் ஐயா ஐயா நாளும் மேலும் பொழுதொரு வண்ணம் என் மகன் வளருகிறான் உள்ளங்களிலே இன்பம் பெருகிட மனதில் நிறைகின்றான் மனதில் நிறைகின்றான்
मेरा बच्चा 5 साल का हो गया।
इतना सब 5 साल में कौन सी बड़ी बात है?
बड़ी बात है मैडम, ये गुंडापा का पहला बच्चा है जो 5 साल की उम्र तक पहुंचा है।
What's amazing about this film is that this never played on television, and yet it got like 19 million views on YouTube, on the official channel, not including all the other places. And if you look at their Facebook page, it's sometime back, it had like 4.5 million likes and things like that. Also, this kind of brand purpose helps them to sort of reach out in places that you wouldn't expect, right? This is something that they did in Kumbh Mela, where they stamped rotis saying, "Like was haath dhoya kya?" Think about it now in the coronavirus era, and you realize that they were really well ahead of their time. So this is, all about Lifebuoy and brands. And all. So overall, what I'm saying basically is that purpose, this brand purpose, the social purpose attracts both talents, people who want to come and work for you, as well as customers, in our case, maybe donors, the community, everybody else. And so really what I'm saying is making a strong plea for saying, let's not just focus on what we do, but let's focus on the why that we do it. So that's really the summary of what I've been talking about for the last 40 minutes, which is social sector is wary of branding. And they think that branding is not required for us, or at best just required to tell our story or to get some donations and so on. But really, and of course, there are differences between the corporate sector and the social sector. And therefore, there has to be a new way of branding for the social sector, and the need to focus much more on the why rather than the what. And of course, we're seeing that even this thing, the for-profit, the corporate sector also started to learn from it. Of course, this requires resources, and we must commit those resources. And I keep arguing that actually NGOs have more resources than they think, because we spend some money making our website, we do annual reports, we do marketing material, but it's all done with that what mentality. And even if this little bit that you spend in doing all this can have the why thing, you will find that it actually results in greater cohesion within the team, therefore greater capacity, and finally that leads to greater impact. I want to end by talking about, again, a TED talk by a guy called Dan Pallotta, and I'd urge you to go and see it if you haven't already. And he said, everyone wants charities to spend as little as possible on overhead. That's backwards. Overhead is what drives growth. If charities can't grow, they can't solve problems. So overhead is a good thing, and I am overhead. And he goes on to then say, our generation doesn't want its epitaph to read, we kept charity overheads low. We wanted to read that we changed the world. My point is that too many social sector organizations focus on two legs of a stool. One leg is the program leg, and the other is the donor leg. And I think that there is a third leg, which is the brand leg. And if we don't do that brand leg, then we're going to have an unstable stool and it will not be able to achieve its objective. So that's really it. I'm done with the prepared part of the webinar. And I'm happy to take any questions.
Thank you, sir. There are 3 questions in the Q&A box. Can you see them, sir?
So the first question is an anonymous attendee saying, one of the ways of reaching out to people is to contribute is to trap their guilt conscience. How do you think this is best achieved? So first of all, it is one of the ways, and it's not necessarily the only way, but I think it's best achieved by inspiring people, right? I mean, it's got to be, my sense is that if you inspire people to say, this is what I'm doing, and this is why I'm doing it, they're more likely to contribute than just by saying, oh, you are so happy, and you're in this comfortable place and have pity on this other person, etc. So, I mean, the reason why Dan Utsav is joy of giving is because we believe that if you feel good about giving, that is a far more powerful force than just a little bit of pity or guilt or whatever else that you feel for the other person. The next question says, do we create and propagate a brand in the COVID time, which is not health or related sector related? So obviously this is, I don't know about this, right? So, I mean, there is 2 schools of thought. I think my answer to that would be, it depends on what your brand is all about, right? Even if it's not about health or related sector, but if it is talking about compassion, if it is talking about some other values that I think are human values and is relevant at any given point in time, then there is no good reason to talk about a brand, etc. In any case, like I think I've been trying to communicate through this webinar today, the brand is about how you help others. And so if you have that helping attitude, then there is no reason to ever switch off and say, oh, I'm not going to do it because it's COVID or whatever else. Apart from TFI, which according to you have done a good job on their branding social development sector, I think there are many, many brands, right? So, or let me not say many, but certainly quite a few brands. So I like Goonj, for example. There's Teach for India. There's Educate Girls. There's Magic Bus. There's several organizations in India which have done a good job. Maybe there's Pradhan. And I think that the way I look at it is that these organizations have internal cohesion. They have managed to, in many cases, become known outside the tight group of, let's say, social sector people and so on. So I don't think that it's just very few number of people who've done it. So there are many people who've built this. Another anonymous attendee, creating those videos and sustained campaigns are so expensive. How can nonprofits handle this to get a quality media material? So the idea for showing you these big films was not to say that we have to spend large amounts of money. Although, like Dan Palota said, putting some money behind branding is a good idea because it will increase your capacity. And anything that increases your capacity helps you towards your mission. So first of all, I'm not at all apologetic about putting money behind branding and marketing. But the other question is to say, the other thing that I'm saying is that let's start by focusing on being clear internally what the brand is all about. And if you can be clear internally, then everyone who works with you, your own employees, your volunteers, the community you work with, your donors, everybody, if they say the same thing, that is already building your brand. And that is building your brand more powerfully than any mass media or social media campaign can do. That's point number 1. So internal cohesion is really critical. The second thing is that once you've built that, everything else that you send out, and like I said, we are all sending out a lot of material. We just don't realize it. We're doing our website, we're doing annual reports, we're sending marketing material on programs and things like that. But they're all scattered. They're not coordinated. They're not with one message. And if you make that one message, then you'll find that your brand becomes stronger. So you may not even end up needing that big mass media campaign, although I'm not saying that you should never do it. I think you should do it. Do you think branding, Sangmesh asks, do you think branding and product quality goes hand in hand? Yes, I mean, if your product quality is not good, then branding will kill it faster. I mean, that's the simple thing, right? Good marketing kills bad products faster than if you had not done good marketing. So first of all, the product quality has to be good. If that's not there, there's no point going to tell the world about it. V. Ramkumar says, when we talk about the why and not necessarily the what is more effective in brand positioning? A, aligning your institution to the larger story of the impact that we are contributing to, in our case, for example, rural education, or B, making the how part of what we are doing stand out to be distinctive, in our case, e-learning. What should resonate with the brand more, the so what impact or the how unique approach being adopted by us? Okay, this is a slightly tricky question. What is it saying? When we talk about the why, do you want to, Anand, do you want to unmute Ramkumar? Maybe he can explain this question a little bit more to me.
Yes, I'll do that.
Hi, Suman.
Hi.
Listen, I mean, this is more to do with the context of brand association here. I mean, obviously, clearly we don't want to be spending so much about the what, but why we are doing this, and there is obviously the association of the brand with the why. But in my view, the why in itself actually can get further classified in two parts.
Right.
Why are we doing it? Which is actually to drive upliftment of the rural children and rural education. That's obviously a much larger canvas. But why are we doing it this way? I mean, we are doing it very differently from everyone else, and there is a whole e-learning context to it. Especially in the COVID context, it has taken even higher prominence. So the why is not just about the larger impact, but why is it the way we are doing it? What should the brand associate further with? That's the question.
Yeah. So first of all, the brand is the entire hut. It's not just that there is a why part. I'm merely saying we should focus a little bit more on that, but the whole thing is the why. So if you think of a house, if you don't have the base, there is no house. If you don't have the pillars, the roof is going to fall. But the roof, that is what you might see from a distance, right? So that's the way the brand hut is sort of thought about. But everything is integrated. I think when you look at the work that I showed you afterwards, whether it is the Ben and Jerry work or the aerial work, etc., all that communication combines the why with something about what and how that they do things, right? So there is that combination that, Ben and Jerry could not talk about the way it is unless it's also a good ice cream. And it just says everything in the context of ice cream. So what you have to do is to say it in the context of e-learning. And, you can't just talk about, great education or whatever. It's not devoid of that. And I think that the trick lies and the challenge lies perhaps in sort of combining that whole thing together. Hopefully I made some sense, but maybe that's a much deeper discussion.
Thank you. No, you did. Thank you.
Sashwati Roy says, suggest some books and speakers to follow to learn about branding. Yeah, so actually the word branding itself is a very big term and there's so many things. I would encourage you to, first of all, that book, The Brand Idea, is worth reading. I think that there are a lot of very interesting books on behavior change, which finally results in different kind of branding. And actually this business of talking about why is one of the tenets that come out of behavior change. So I would urge you to read a lot more about behavior change. And there are books like Predictably Rational, Nudge, and so many others. And I have a book too. It's called Marketing Unplugged, but that's more for the corporate sector at this point. Which is better means of brand building for social sector, digital or print? And, somebody called BP asked that question. That's just the wrong question to ask, I feel. We're too focused on media as being really crucial. And I would say that the most important method of building a brand is your employee, right? You've got to get that right. You've got to, everybody believes in this brand. That may be the most important. After that, the way you communicate, whether it's digital, print, television, doesn't really matter. Social media, it doesn't matter. Because so long as you all say the same thing, I mean, your annual report is an important way to communicate. So the question is, who are you communicating with? And that will determine the how to communicate with them. But I think we spend too much time on worrying about the media, not enough time worrying about the message. So the message of this webinar is focus on the message. Vandana asks, do you think there is too much focus on branding in non-profit sector these days? And are they overlooking to improve on methods to work on the cause? How to maintain this balance? And I'm not quite sure that that is true, right? So I believe that, in fact, I believe that there's too little focus on branding, and whatever there is kind of mindless, right? I mean, it's just done in this sort of, shall we say, the boring old ways, or in a very unthinking, unthoughtful kind of a manner. So therefore, I would say that, like I said before, it is a third leg of the stool, and you need three legs for a stool to be stable. So I'm not saying that you can't, you have to forget about working for the cause. That's your programs are obviously critical. Without the programs, there is nothing that's going to work. Obviously, donor relations are important, and you have to get money. So funding is important. So that's the second part that might be considered to be the sales part of your job. And then there is the third part, which is the brand part. And I think the message today is that the brand helps with programs, the brand helps with donations, the brand helps with attracting volunteers, attracting employees. It works with a variety of things. It improves, in short, it improves capacity. So, okay, so that's all the questions. I think I've answered all of them.
Yes, sir. These are the questions we have. Everything is answered. With this, we come to the end of this webinar, a grand one, a lot of food for thought for all of us. Thank you, Suman sir, for this. I thank you on behalf of eVidyaloka, and I thank all the participants for taking their time on this Saturday to attend this. Definitely, it was valuable. Thank you. Have a great weekend.
Thank you. Bye.
Thank you. Bye.